Mental health. The Conservative parliamentary candidate for Cambridge hitting the national headlines in the last 24 hours after she suggested mental health sufferers could wear wristbands. Jamali Fernando was speaking at a hustings event in Cambridge. She said wearing wristbands indicating the nature of a person's condition would be helpful to professionals as they often could not explain themselves. So we're asking this morning, does she have a point? If you had to help somebody with a mental health problem, and if you knew they had one, would it make it easier? Or are we stepping back into the dark ages, stigmatising those that have a problem? Before we discuss the pros and cons, let's speak to political blogger Richard Taylor. He was at the hustings the other night and tweeted the comments. He records most of these things. Richard, morning.
Good morning, Paul.
First of all, there's been a lot of misreporting of what she actually said. Definitively, what went on?
Well, I was at the hustings and I was live tweeting, and it was my live tweet from the hustings which then got picked up by first the student media in Cambridge, and then it's over the last day or so it's got picked up by more and more people, and of course the news story sort of changed a little bit. It gets picked up by different people. Every person writing the article puts their own spin on it, seems to embellish it a little bit, and it's ended up on the front page of the Mirror today and in the Independent. So initially, as soon as after I made the tweet, one of Jamali Fernando's first responses was to claim that there's no story here and that my tweet was distorting what had been said, and that actually prompted a lot of debate in itself. Now, the question arises over the word. I tweeted to say that she had urged the wearing of wristbands. Now, quite what that word means, or whether she suggested that it would be a good idea or people should. Essentially, she was saying it would be a good idea for people who she comes into contact with professionally as a barrister, who are presumably in police cells or in court cells, had wristbands to identify their mental health conditions to people like her who interact with them so they can treat them appropriately. Now, I thought this was quite an astonishing and shocking thing to say. I thought it was the newsworthy statement that had been made in the hustings. That's why I tweeted it, and I commented on it myself straight away. I said, this is the craziest policy I've ever heard. One of the real things I thought was interesting is that hustings are good for putting people under pressure. They're having to answer questions live, and it says to me that if someone's going to blurt out an thought-out policy in a hustings, then are they really up to being Cambridge's representative in Parliament? What happens if they do this kind of thing speaking in the House of Commons, suddenly get an idea and blurt it out before considering it and before discussing it with experts and refining it, because there might actually be a grain of a good idea behind this. The concept of a medical alert bracelet is well established, and there is this the idea of a green card that autistic people carry and then can take out to present to perhaps a police officer interacting with them to explain their condition. So, and it seems that was the kind of thing she was trying to get at.
Other people have referred to pink triangles and yellow stars. And,
well, that's certainly the response that's been on Twitter. Yeah. It's been people have been referring back to the Nazi government requiring Jewish people to wear yellow stars, yellow badges, to identify themselves, and that is the problem with the wristband. That is and Fernando suggested wristbands, and
the stigma of it, isn't there? There's a stigma attached to identifying minorities, isn't there?
Well, exactly, and a wristband is a very overt thing, and of course the aim is the aim of her policy would be to get people to be treated differently. So rather than treating people with a mental illness or just being like sometimes I think mental illness is a bit of an odd way of saying it. Like we're all somewhere on the spectrum of normality and sanity, and for her to suggest that people who are not sort of bang in the middle of that, as she considers it, to be treated differently and not just as any other person who you would talk to and find out about how they're feeling. Like anyone in that kind of situation, in a cell, in a court, is not going to be their normal selves anyway. Everyone's going to need a different type of personal assistance from those they come into contact with. So, but she was suggesting sort of almost not treating everybody as an individual, but it would help her as a lawyer. Like this is the context it was put in. She wanted to be able to help people better as a barrister. So she thought that it would assist her if people had a coloured wristband to identify what kind of mental condition they had, and then presumably she would then want to treat people differently. When I think really we just need to treat. You need to treat everybody as an individual and talk to them about their situation.
Richard, thank you very much. You heard it from the horse's mouth. Richard Taylor was there. He was documenting what was said. We'll get into the pros and cons of it in the next 10 minutes, and you can have your say. Wristbands for mental health patients. A stigmatising wristband or a freeing up?